Patrick Henry said it best. Peace, peace, but there is no peace. We keep asking for it, we keep hoping for it, but there isn't any. Um, for anybody that had any illusions that this divide that is growing and becoming significantly um, greater in our country and in our culture today, for anyone who thought that maybe that would be settled or go away peacefully, I think the Kavanaugh hearings, circus though they were, and Jerry Springer style showmanship that they were, I think they proved more than anything that such a hope is not possible. That's not because, and I don't believe that this is going to erupt into any kind of civil war. I've heard numerous people talk about how there's a civil war on the other end of all this, between the liberals and the conservatives. Some people are even talking about a civil war between black people and white people now because of this great racial divide that's being the fires are being stoked by the media and in large part also by the liberal Democrat Party, and their friends in the media. But I don't think that there will be a civil war in any sense like there was during the 1860s. I listened to Matt Walsh, and he, according to him, we're far too lazy and far too insulated in our little cocoons, our little comfortable lives. And I tend to agree with him. I think that most people would never abandon all the comfort and their wealth and their prosperity, such that it is, to go and fight in a legitimate war between two sides. Besides, there's not a geographical divide that would tell us, one side from the other. Made it kind of simple during the Civil War when there was a North and a South, and anyone below the Mason-Dixon line was the enemy, and anyone above it was the enemy of their enemy. That kind of drew the line there. But there wouldn't be any sort of Mason-Dixon line in this circumstance. So it would be really hard. It would be brother fighting brother, next door neighbor fighting next door neighbor, and it's implausible. It's not going to happen. But that does not preclude the reality that of mass rioting, horrendous civil unrest, and anarchy and chaos. And I think those things are not far away from where we're at. If you really look at what's going on, the fires are being stoked by the media and by a lot of politicians to create just such an atmosphere. I think the Democrat Party is not solely, but in a lot of ways to blame for this. The Republicans, they create they commit their own sins. There's no doubt about that. But if you look at the rhetoric that is coming out of the Democrat Party, Maxine Waters is a perfect example. Calling on people to create a scene and confront and get up in the face of anybody who works for the Trump administration. Basically, anyone who's conservative. She's calling on them, on people to be aggressive and get up in the face of these people. And you saw that play out during the hearings for Brett Kavanaugh. There were protesters. That's how Jeff Flake changed his mind. Originally he was going to vote for Kavanaugh right off the bat, but then he got in the elevator and there was this lady screaming at him, why can't you look at me? Why can't you look at survivors? Why can't you listen to us? How are you going to vote? How can you vote yes? Blah, blah, blah. Just screaming in his face, being very aggressive, very confrontational. And it was it was because of that, in large part, even though he may not admit it, but in large part, the reason why he asked for that week-long seventh investigation into Brett Kavanaugh, which turned out to be a blessing in disguise for the Republicans, but at the time, it was a nail-biter. And it's turned out there have been conservative, more underground media, or not, I shouldn't say media, investigative journalists who literally are probably the only real journalists left in America, like America First News. What I think, yeah, whatever media organization that Matt Couch works for. He does great work. If you don't know anything about him, go and check him out. Matt Couch. I think it's America First. I'm sorry, Matt. I don't. But I mean, check him out on Twitter. He's very involved in finding out the two main things that he's investigating is the murder of Seth Rich and the murder or the shooting in Vegas. Obviously, he doesn't believe the reports put out by the government, and frankly, neither do I. But Matt Couch with America First Media. Laura Loomer does really good stuff. The Gateway Pundit, Rebel Media. But anyway, the Gateway Pundit found out that this girl that was screaming, that was at the forefront of this group, this cabal of other ladies that were screaming at Jeff Flake, they found out that she was working for, and acknowledged that she worked for, an organization paid for by George Soros. And George Soros is like enemy numero uno. I mean, this is the guy that is really throwing gasoline on all the fire, on the flames of unrest, civil unrest, and racial tension. I mean, he's doing everything he can to create anarchy, I believe, and this is why I'm convinced that what's going on in our country is only going to accelerate. The unrest, the anarchy, the rioting, all that's coming around the corner, and it's going to be coming fast, and it's going to be coming hard. Because people like George Soros are not interested in promoting nation states. They're interested in breaking them down. They are, him and other rich, enormously wealthy people like him, he's a billionaire, are involved in trying to break down countries, break down nation states, erase borders. That's why you see what's going on over in Europe right now with the migrants, the immigration crisis. This is not an accident. This is a manufactured crisis. And world leaders over there like Angela Merkel are playing along with it and facilitating the destruction of their nations. And they're doing it intentionally. Theresa May, I don't know how complicit she is in all this, but she's not helping the situation at all with her horrible handling of the Brexit situation over there, of bringing about Brexit. She sucks. And if you want to hear somebody really lay out the truth on what's going on with Theresa May, listen to Nigel Farage and John Gaunt. John Gaunt has a good podcast. He's always on the ball with what's going on over there. Listen to John Gaunt. I listen to him on iTunes, and just to keep a foot of what's happening over there and the absurd situation that Theresa May has found herself in and is creating, I think intentionally. And just the circus. We had our circus with Brett Kavanaugh, and right now there's a circus going on over there with the show trial of Tommy Robinson. Which is, it's all Springer over there too, and it has to do with his followers impassionedly believing that if he goes into prison for any length of time, he'll be killed, and with some merit. You know, he was beaten up severely before when he was in prison. He had all his teeth kicked out. So it's not without some justification that they worry about this, but all these things are happening with such force and so fast now. And the media, you know, they get you obsessing over little stupid things, over, you know, I don't trivialize, like, victims in any way, shape, or form, but, I mean, they really, the focus was not on whether Brett Kavanaugh was truly qualified to be a judge on the Supreme Court. Instead, it was over accusations that could never be proven, and they knew damn well they could never be proven. There's no way to prove them. They were uncorroborated. There were no witnesses to corroborate them. The people that they called upon denied even knowing Brett Kavanaugh. And then those people have now come forward and said that they faced immense pressure from people that knew Ford and some of the others, faced immense pressure to change their stories and corroborate them, to lie, basically. you see the handling of the case or the allegations by Dianne Feinstein. And I mentioned it in my last podcast. I think she should be investigated and brought up on charges if necessary. I mean, this kind of thing cannot and should not be allowed. The Democrats are the minority in the country right now in power. We want to keep it that way through November, but until something changes, they are the minority. They are the weaker party. They don't have a president, and they don't have a majority in the House or the Senate, but they behave and they act and they bully like they are the stronger. And the Republicans, up until that speech by Lindsey Graham, up until then, were behaving like the weaker party. They've since found their balls and a backbone. Thank God for Lindsey Graham. But this is not going to change. This divide, it's only going to accelerate, and that's because it's not something that the people are creating. Most people in middle America just want to go about their daily lives, go to work, feed their family, have a few extra bucks left over to put in savings so that they can go on vacation in the summer. That's about it. Put your kids through college. Just be successful and live a generally relaxed, happy life. You know, turn on the TV and drink a cold beer, or go to church on Sunday. Have the family over on holidays. That's about it. You know, that's what most people want, and they don't want to be bothered. They don't want it disrupted. And but all that's thrown into question and chaos by politicians who are fear mongers. You know, they use because they, particularly the liberal Democrats, because they don't like Trump, they create all these illusions of, you know, of this chaos, this idea that his administration is in total chaos all the time. If that were so, how has he accomplished so much? How is the economy better than it has ever been since the 60s? Unemployment's the lowest it's been in forever. The GDP is at 4, you know. How was it that he was the only president that actually talked some sense into North Korea, has brought the UN to pay their fair share, the other nations, is calling out China and these other big economies for just raping us economically with trade tariffs. He's gone to bat for America in ways that no other president has in a long, long time. And they want to kill him for that. And that's the whole point. This divide, even though there are simple Americans out there who just don't want any part of it, they're going to be used as a pawn. They're going to be instigated. They're going to have their fears played upon to get them agitated and get them out in the streets to get them to a fever pitch of emotion, so that rational thought and intelligence goes out the window, and the only thing that's really at play is emotion. And that's the most dangerous situation anyone can be in, a country can be in, when it's functioning almost solely off of emotion. And you saw that during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. Before Ford had even testified, every single Democrat ran around the room and said, "I believe you." They hadn't even heard her story. They hadn't even heard her testify, much less listen to Brett Kavanaugh's defense, and they had all gone around the room and said, "I believe you." What a load of shit. You know, that's a slap into the face. That's a slap in the face to everything that is America right there. To say, "I believe you," before you've even testified. To declare guilt before the defendant has even had a chance to defend himself. I mean, that is what I'm talking about. And this divide is certainly not going to go anywhere, because it's based off of ideology. You have the right, which is still, even though we are technically now a post-Christian society, but the right is more or less still in line with Judeo-Christian values. They value life. You know, they're pro-life. They're against euthanasia. They want to defend life whenever possible. The Republican Party, even though there are those in it who are establishment Republicans and are very much for big government, and I would hesitate to call those conservatives by any measure, and I think they should be voted out of office. But the Republican Party, that's kind of being molded by Trump now, because you see it now. You see the never Trumpers, like Lindsey Graham was a never Trumper. You start to see these people start to break down, and they're noticing like there is something good going on there, and so they're starting to follow the Trump ideology, the Trump game plan, and his game plan, his ideology is of valuing America first. It's of God, country, and freedom. It's largely, even though I disagree with him over the way he spends, the omnibus bill was a travesty. And I'm bitterly against big government in any form, or the government being involved in as much of the citizens' private lives as it has been and will continue to be. But there's a lot of good things that Trump is doing, and he's directly opposed and is a direct opposing force to everything that the Democratic Party stands for today, and that is why this divide is not going anywhere. Because number one, their sacred sacrament is abortion. Okay, that is their kingpin. That is the king on the chessboard, the queen and the king on the chessboard for the Democrats. Don't ask me why they value it so much, but they protect that with the tenacity and severity of a mother bear over her cubs. You just saw that with the Brett Kavanaugh thing. I think it was Chuck Schumer that said, "I will oppose this nomination with everything in me. I will do whatever it takes to stop Brett Kavanaugh from being on the Supreme Court." And they sure as hell did. You can't fault them for not trying. They tried. Even Kavanaugh said that. He said, "You've tried hard. You've tried everything. But I'm not going anywhere." And thank God he didn't. But it truly is such a stark contrast between the two. Besides even abortion, they want open borders. They do not value America as a sovereign entity. They instead look to a time when there will be a North American continent, a North American Union, when Canada, the United States, and Mexico, and largely South America as well, will be run as one state, when Europe will be another state, and Asia another one. That's what they're leading towards. They're leading towards socialism. The main momentum of the Democrat Party is socialist. There's no denying it now. The new blood coming in, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is a admitted pure socialist. And Barack Obama just endorsed her. So that should tell you all you need to know right there. Their direction is so far to the left now that people like Hillary Rodham Clinton and Nancy Pelosi are looked at as moderates. That should shock anybody. But they don't value religious freedom in any way that the Republicans or the conservatives do. The Democrats are largely for gay rights, which, as far as civil rights go, I am all for it. But they champion the rights of gay rights. They champion that over religious liberty, not on an equal slate with them. And a perfect example of that is what's going on with with I think his name is Jack Phillips, with the cake shop out in Colorado. The mere and that was besides Kavanaugh, that cake shop with Jack Phillips case is a perfect example of how the left looks at anybody that disagrees with them. And this again is why this divide is not going anywhere, and it's only going to get worse. They cannot stand the idea of somebody out there disagreeing with them. They cannot stand the idea of the existence of somebody disagreeing with them. They cannot stand the thought of a Christian morals and principles call out another person's lifestyle as sin, even if they live peacefully side by side with them. The very idea that I may think that homosexuality is a sin to them means that I should not even exist, and certainly should not be allowed to, in any way, shape, or form, voice my opinions. California was just recently trying to pass a bill, and I forget who it was that tried to put the bill through, but the gentleman pulled it at the last second, and I believe it had the support to pass. I forget why he pulled the bill, but the bill itself was going to ban basically religious groups, Christian groups, from being allowed to speak to homosexuals and try to basically convert them, basically try to win them to Christ, to talk them and talk them out of and convert them out of homosexuality, because in the Christian faith, homosexuality is a sin, and I believe that 100%. That doesn't mean that homosexuals shouldn't be allowed to live in America. It doesn't mean they shouldn't have the same rights as us, but that does not mean that homosexuality is a morally right way to live. It isn't. It is wrong. It goes against nature. It goes against how God put us on this earth to live, the basic structure of life. There's a reason to why God did things, a man and a woman. Everything in creation has a basic order to it, and when you break up that order, there are consequences, and we're looking at that consequence now. Because, and this is getting way off topic, and I'm just rambling to an extent, but, if you say okay to homosexuality, all right, that's fine. But then you have to come to a point where you wonder where the line actually is. If whatever your sexual proclivity is what you were born with, and therefore good, then anything is defensible. You can be and it's coming. This is something that's starting to gain momentum now. You can defend pedophilia then. There was a recent TED Talks about that, how if you have a sexual attraction to prepubescent children, then that's just how you're born, and that's good. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It is wrong if you act on it, but it is okay if you were born that way, and that's your sexual choice. Or they would say it's not a choice. That's what you're born with sexually. Your orientation, pedophilia. That's where we're starting to arrive as a culture, and it's inevitable. It's the logical conclusion to accepting other forms of sexual perversion that are not as obviously bad right off the bat. And it all started, largely with the sexual revolution that just completely annihilated the family, monogamy, with free love and all that. So, these are just things have gotten to such a stark point, and it's been. I remember reading about it in magazines when I was in high school in the early 2000s, about how there was a stark divide between conservatives and liberals, and it was reaching a fever pitch. Well, they had no idea what was coming, because it's really reached a fever pitch now, and it's not going anywhere. If conservatives think that there's, and I hope people really do learn something from the Kavanaugh hearings and take something away from that, because if you really think that that things are going to calm down, then you're not paying attention. You really need to be aware of the fact that if you believe what you believe, and if you believe in Christ or the gospel or God or even just basic Judeo-Christian values, then there's going to be some serious conflict coming for you. Even if you're just conservative, there's going to be some serious conflict coming your way. The culture is shifting fast, and it's changing very fast every day. It's moving at such a speed that it's almost impossible to even keep up with it. And then at the same time, you just have this media shrieking in your ears all the time, this cling and clamor, this endless drone of voices screaming and howling about things that most of the time don't matter. And then they wonder why people go insane and fly planes into the IRS building or shoot up a school. I don't defend any of that, but I can understand sometimes why people go lose their mind and do stuff like that. It's this feeling of hopelessness that your voice is not going to be heard. You look around and you see the madness going on around you, and you feel like no matter what you do, it doesn't matter. Nobody's paying attention, nobody cares, and you can't change anything. And that's a horrible thought. It really is, that you don't matter and your voice doesn't matter. And no matter what you do or say, you're not going to stop this gradual decline and this gradual descent into the abyss that we seem to be headed down into. So yeah, that's a crazy feeling. But I think the Kavanaugh thing and some other things that have been going on, but that really was like the ding ding you hear like right before two fighters come out. It's all out war now. Things are going to get uglier, and we need street fighters in there like Trump and Lindsey Graham and others. You really do. You don't. Is it the time for soft-spoken conservatives who are polite and think that ethics, as great as that can be, and as much as we need ethical men in there, but the idea that just they're going to reason their way to victory is done. It's over. It's not going to work. You need people that really can get down and dirty, not in a sinful way, not in a criminal way, but like Lindsey Graham and Trump. I'm talking about just not holding back. The time for being polite and minding your P's and Q's and soft-spoken and all this and not fighting back in a lot of ways, which a lot of people are like, well, duh, of course. Yeah, but that's been the main issue with the Republican Party for so long, is that they've just been these soft-spoken, some of them, ethical idiots that have done nothing, spineless. And they've let the liberals be out of fear for these social fervor, of people confronting them in elevators and everything. It's only going to increase, and you got to stand against the storm if you're going to accomplish anything, if you're going to save the country, because I'm convinced that the deep state is real. I'm convinced of that, and they're working day and night. The resistance, the deep state, whatever you want to call them, there are people in our government. It's evident now. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's evident. Lisa Page, Peter Strzok. These people are working day and night to thwart and undermine and oust Trump and others that would try to protect our liberties and the sovereignty of America. They're working day and night. I'm convinced people like Rod Rosenstein, and others, these people are no friends of America at all. So we need to be on our guard about all this. And there's going to be worse coming. That's the basic gist of what I'm trying to get across here today. But so yeah, that's the broadcast for today. That's it from Woke Nation. You can subscribe on iTunes, Podbean, and YouTube. You can leave me questions, comments, criticisms, insults, whatever at roadnottaken04@juno.com. You can like and follow the Woke Nation Facebook page. But for now, good night, and God be with you.